Here. Councilmember Nordby.
Here.
Mayor Monge.
Here.
Here's feedback from yours.
Careful what you wish for. All right. I get on to adopt the agenda, please.
So moved, Your Honor.
So move. Councilmember Wong, second.
Second.
Councilmember Norby, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Topics.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
First up is the potential development of the 2329 17th Avenue, and I'm going to turn that over to Brandy, our Community Development Director.
Good evening, everybody. You might recall this topic from earlier in the year when we looked at a couple of proposals on this site. Earlier this year, the City Council requested additional information regarding this property at the corner of 17th and Delaware Avenue. And it is our understanding that your intent is to ultimately determine the most appropriate manner of disposition of this site. The subject site is a 2.4 acre parcel that was the former location of a church that was demolished in 2009. The property is located in a low-density residential neighborhood and it's owned single-family residential. The background on this property is that it was purchased in 2005 for $800,000. It was then filed for foreclosure in 2008. In 2008, it was then listed for $925,000 and then later reduced to $850,000 and was ultimately picked up by Evangelical Christian Church from the Ramsey County Sheriff's Sale in 2008 for $630,764. That church was then demolished in 2009 and the city ultimately purchased the property in 2010 for $145,000. It was listed 3 months later at a price of $195,000. And then in 2018, the city entered into a letter of intent with Brueggemann Builders. They offered $70,000 to purchase the site, subject to approval of development of 14 to 28 dwelling units. That sale did not come to fruition. The property was later listed in 2019 at an unknown price, and then most recently this year we had a couple of offers on the property, one from Andrus, KT and Andrus for $70,000, subject to the approval of 6-unit development project, and then the other offer was from High Point Group for $150,000, subject to approval of 12 units. Since we last talked, we had an appraisal of the property completed. The appraisal analyzed the property based on the highest and best use, and those items are, what's physically possible to build there. As you probably already know, the easternmost portion of the site has minimal development potential. What's legally possible under the zoning of single family, what's financially feasible based on the pre-development costs that are required for this site, and what's maximally productive as in number of units. And our appraiser's conclusion on the highest and best use of the property is low-density single-family residential development, and the estimated market value is $100,000. So we've got a couple of options to go through tonight. I'll run through them fairly quickly, and then we'll open it up to discussion amongst you. But we've basically got the two developers to choose from, those different proposals. Earlier this year, you asked staff to investigate what it would take for the city to retain this property and have it subdivided by the city for uses in the student-built project. And then a fourth option is to just list it with a realtor and sell it. So if you would think back to earlier this year, the proposal from KT and Andrus was to develop 6 single-family lots on 1 acre, and then 1.5 acre would be an outlot as green space. The lots would face Delaware and 17th Avenue. The density would be 6 dwelling units per acre, which excludes the green space. And again, the purchase price was $70,000. The project would provide new tax base from those new single-family homes, and it aligns with the existing development pattern. It also contributes towards meeting the for-sale single-family demand. Something that I became aware of today, there was an error in the staff report regarding the need for a zoning variance or rezoning for this property. Based on the information that I had at the time, I was using 0.14 acre and using that calculation to determine the size of the lots. And surprisingly enough, when you have 0.14 and then you put it out by like 10 decimal points, it comes up with a very different yield of square footage for the lot than what I had initially had at just 0.14. So in sum, there is no variance needed or rezoning for this particular proposal. And the other proposal was from High Point Group, and they had a similar relatively low density proposal, but they were going to have 12 units as twin homes. They were going to develop approximately 1.5 acres with 1 acre as the outlot. Their purchase price was proposed at $150,000. And again, their project would create new tax base from those new two-family dwellings. The higher density that they propose aligns with our comprehensive plan future land use designation, which is medium-density residential. And this project contributes toward the meeting any for-sale multifamily demand in the community. And as I mentioned before, this particular project would require a need for a PUD as part of a zoning approval to move forward. So here's the new option to retain the property for student-built housing. So in determining this, or running some numbers, we had to look and see what it would cost to get the site ready for development. So we've estimated that pre-development costs would be about $17,000. That includes the rezoning, platting, legal fees, and engineering review. There's about $287,000 worth of site work that would need to be completed, which includes sanitary sewer realignment, water main services, storm sewer and grading, site restoration, pavement installation, patching, and erosion control. Our finance director indicated that if we were going to do this, we would need to borrow for those upfront costs in order to build in the next year or so. So the assumptions that I used in doing the analysis, which will be on the following slide, is that we would have 6 single-family lots similar to the Andrus, KT and Andrus proposal. We would complete the site work in 2024. The homes would cost about $300,000 in construction materials with a 3% annual increase each year, and our permitting fees would have a 0.5% annual increase. And then on the following slide, you'll see that I had 2 for sale prices. It's a little bit small. The low price is based on what was provided in the appraisal. The homes in the appraisal were selling for about $308,500, and those were within 2 miles of the subject property. The higher value was based on the fact that these are newer homes and closer to what we're selling the other properties for that are the same footprint and model. So on the left is the low purchase price would have us losing over the 6-year period almost $400,000, $441,000. If we were to be lucky enough to sell them for $380,000, we would have a net gain of about $18,000. And that's just assuming that all of the assumptions that I have put into this model are accurate and would, hold true moving forward. So thinking about this potential option for retaining the property for student built, I would ask that the council consider, and the HRA as well, is this option consistent with our Housing and Redevelopment Authority's mission, since it is their property, and it is that, actually I believe it's the city's property, but it's the HRA's mission to support the student-built homes. Is the city comfortable with the potential net loss on the project if the HRA mission is met? And is this partnership with our school district sustainable for the next 5 to 10 years? If we do decide to move forward with this, I would recommend that we get a longer-term commitment. Normally, we've done a 1-year commitment for each house, so we might want to make sure that we've got a commitment that they're willing to do 5 years' worth. And then is there a backup plan if the partnership were to dissolve? So the final option is to simply just sell the lot, put it on the market with a realtor. No upfront investment is needed with this option, and limited staff involvement would be needed. We would have a little bit less control over the outcome and the contribution. Sorry, we would have to pay commission to the realtor at the time of closing. There would be a cost associated with that. But other than that, that is the end of the presentation, so I will open it up for your discussion.
Did you receive the proposal that they sent Luther?
I did
about
not directly receive a proposal from Luther.
Today? Okay, it was done, went to the mayor and council, so I wasn't sure if it got there yet.
I saw it, but I didn't receive it in my email box.
Was there any discussion or recommendations? Has planning seen this?
Planning Commission has not seen this.
Any other questions?
Can you speak to the density differences between R1 and R2?
In the zoning ordinance?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, if you would just give me a moment, I can pull that up. So the density for, I think this would require me to do a little bit of math, but from my recollection of the previous analysis, the density for the 6-unit is in line with our zoning ordinance, and it's acceptable in the comp plan. The density of the High Point group would be greater than what is acceptable by the zoning ordinance, but is in line with the more medium density land use of the comp plan.
Is it that the next, whatever gets developed there is supposed to move towards that higher density?
Well, that's where we have a little bit of a mismatch because our property has not been zoned for the higher density, but the comprehensive plan supports it. So if this group were to desire to move forward with a higher density development, we would need to have some kind of zoning, not variance, flexibility with the High Point Group's proposal. And that flexibility would be a PUD based on our requirement of the zoning ordinance that groupings of multiple 2 families would have to have a PUD. And so that PUD flexibility could be the avenue to achieve that zoning/comp plan agreement.
Thank you.
Brian,
Go ahead.
when a PUD is granted, can you tell me that process? Is that something that we have to get input from all the neighbors on and the local residents?
A public hearing would be required, which would go out to people within 350 feet of the property. The subject property would get a notification letter sent to them, and it would also go in the newspaper. If there was a desire to hold a public meeting in addition to that requirement, that would be an option as well.
Thank you.
I appreciate the information. I'm glad we did a appraisal, so we understand what we're dealing with here. I mean, the tax value on that is $484,000, which is outrageous. It's like there's still a building on it. And just to understand what the land could be used for, because the last student hope built housing, we paid 200 and some $1,000, so it was 115,000 a lot for at the one. So we have to look at justifying selling that piece of property, and then you're going out and buying more expensive property. So it's along the lines of a lot of work has to be done as far as the grading, sewer, and everything else. So it was good to understand the property and be able to go forward with that, because as elected officials up here, we have to justify when people are saying, why are you spending this, and turn around and selling things for that. So that was the main goal, I think, of just trying to understand what we're dealing with here and the expenses, and to see if it is a good idea. If not, then at least we know that that property was not a good fit for it because of the work that needs to be done. So that was my biggest concern, was just to understand what we got, because we have 140,000 into it as a city, and the value is 100,000 right now. So we have to understand what the value is before we can decide on what we're doing with it. So I appreciate the staff doing that and giving us the information. I know it was a very in-depth report, 65 pages. It had other, it's an odd lot, just like, everybody said, so. And just to understand, so what's the goal for us tonight as far as what you want to see?
Well, staff has presented the options that was requested, and so at this point, we're simply seeking your direction on what to do, if anything, with this piece of property.
I just wanted to be clear. Okay.
I agree with you, Mayor. We followed all proper questioning we had, especially during the student builds and discussing what the student builds would look like if we did have it there. But we did go through all the presentations and had come to somewhat of a thought of what this would look like moving forward. And I truly believe, this is from me speaking, that I believe we need to make a decision moving forward and get this solidified.
Does anybody have an opinion about the student-built homes, about using that, after we got all the information together, if it's a good fit, if it's not a good fit?
The potential $500,000 loss is concerning. Very concerning to me. That's my biggest hesitation for it.
And I don't think we should be in the business of floating things for years, but
Although the student built housing is nice, let's consider the neighbors around too. I mean, you have, if we're looking at 6 units
Years
on
of-
there, that's 6 years of all season long.
yep, I agree with that too.
Are there alternative lots available for the student built going forward, available in town, that have been identified?
Yep, the city owns at least one that's on 6th Street and 7th Avenue, I believe.
Yep, right by Webster. I drove past it.
Yep, that one was purchased and subdivided with the intent of having a student-built house there. It's a little bit smaller of a lot than others, but it did receive a conditional use permit to enable it to have that student-built on it. Other than that, the city owns a couple of other lots that are a little bit questionable in terms of their ability to support another student-built on it, just by the relationship of easements and utilities, but it's not impossible. But the ones that are available, ready to go, we just have the one.
There's one that's actually in the HRA name. Is that the old Lori gas station on 17th and, corner of 17th and Century?
That's a really small lot. It's
Yeah,
not
and
buildable.
that's not
but
feasible. I'm
correct.
just saying the property we have. So we ruled that one out. 6th Street
So the 6th and 7th Avenue is
is
the only
is a
one.
possibility. So
Yep.
that gives us, this year, we're working on the one. So it gives us next year to be working on that one, 6th Street, if that's possible, if we can get that working.
There's another one. We have a part, I think we call it the tot lot. That is a potential.
We do, but I've heard from Public Works Department that that may not be the ideal location, and I've also uncovered some history on that site that may preclude it from being an option. So I need to consult with legal on that to confirm, but that was the best second case scenario, was that tot lot, and I just am not 100% sure if it's an opportunity at this point.
Okay.
Tot lot, never heard of it.
Is that the same as Country Club Park?
That is the one, yep.
That's the same thing?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Also, when you told me that's where the ice rink is, right across from Colby, it looks like they took a house down and they got that little extension. Looks like it was a lot where a house was at one time. They got the fence and a bench there sitting.
Yep. That's where they set up the ice rink. We did find out another place recently that I'm currently looking into, some more information to come on that, but another potential lot. But
Okay.
haven't gotten too far down that road yet.
So we have two, we have this year and next year, looks like we're sitting pretty good with. This is a good program and we would like to try to continue, but if we're gonna sell this and we're gonna buy others, we have to justify what we're doing here. Because otherwise people are gonna say, well, they got rid of that place, could have been something, so I think it's a great conversation we're having. Anything, sir?
I mean, for me, I'm aligned with a lot of the comments that I hear from up here. I think there are some lots to continue the student-built housing. I'm also convinced that we can work with either of the developers to come to an arrangement that maybe the city maintains a property, a lot for a student-built house. I don't know, I'm making assumptions. So I mean, there's always the hybrid approach. But I think both parties have waited and have been extremely patient. So I think it's time that we start moving forward. And I don't know if
I agree.
either or both party would like to present or represent again. I know that the two gentlemen that are over here today have
Another one?
have a different rendition of what they had, and I believe it was decreasing the square footage of the house, which would bring the prices down slightly. So I guess I would love to hear both, I'd hate to award both off of an email, right? I guess is what I'm saying.
Great. I'd like to get that finished as far as if we can agree that probably not going forward with the student housing is the way we're gonna go,
Or a hybrid of
or,
one of, and then I'm talking like a lot.
yeah. But I mean, as far as
Yeah.
putting it,
Entire lot.
Yeah.
getting,
Yeah, as long as those other lots are feasible and seem conducive to the student-built program, I don't see why not.
okay. I want to clear one thing up, so we can say we're moving away from the student build at this time and looking at the other plans. Okay. Sounds good. Thank you. Do I need to do anything after we said that, or we just move on? There's no voting or anything like that, so we don't have to worry about that. So let's move on to
So
the.
would our direction be to staff that we would like to invite them as soon as they are both ready and prepared to present at one of the future council meetings so we can make a decision between the two groups?
I agree. I'm
Is
for
that the direction to have staff move?
That is one option. Another option is a potential closed session to discuss the proposals that are on the table.
And I guess I would prefer to see
Both
parties
present-
represent, because I can't make a decision based off of emails that have come in late.
Sure.
And other things.
And both parties, correct, have shared new plans.
Has anybody talked to the parties? Is that-
I have not had conversations with either in a number of weeks. It's probably,
I mean, I know High Point presented something different from what they presented.
Exactly,
first night.
yep.
And so,
yep, I can definitely invite them both back in January. Is there a preference on the first or the second meeting?
I would say first meeting, let's get the ball rolling.
Okay.
and I know Tracy and Doug have got new stuff too, so.
Do we still want to have some conversation about what's existing on what Brandy presented?
Existing,
I mean, the packet
The
yeah.
And the other
concepts on the
options?
table currently, you mean?
that are currently on the table, yeah.
Yep, if you, I don't know where you're at with it. You sat down, are you done?
I have no more to present. The conversation is open.
confused on.
I'm just do we want to have more conversation around options 1 and 2 as they are presented here? Or do we feel like that's,
Sounds like it's changed, and has anybody reached out to High Point? Is they still interested? I mean, how long has it been?
It's been a few weeks since I've heard from them. I would, based on that, I think they are still interested. I'm not sure if they're asking or proposed purchase
He did a
price
whole
remains the
proposal
same.
of something else, and then a completely different thing showed up as his proposal afterwards, and we never talked to him about.
Yeah.
I mean, we were looking at a golf course and some other stuff, and then we got a different proposal of one level.
That is correct.
Okay, I don't know, we want to,
I mean, I think both presentations, if we're taking the time to revisit this again, then.
Get
yeah,
both of them here.
Presentations and fully both,
final and best?
I mean, yeah, all the options. It sounds like there's been options sent that's not here tonight before us.
Yep.
And so there's some consideration, it sounds like. I would find it really helpful if the Planning Commission took a review of this first.
If that is the case.
That would bump it to the second meeting in
Second one
January.
in
Yep.
January.
For the two of you at the end and my naiveness from the planning commission, how detailed do you need, do they need to have plans to, can they just approve concepts?
I think they can. A little bit more detail than what I saw maybe today would be ideal for Planning Commission.
If I remember right from the email you sent today, yours isn't done yet. You just gave a preliminary of one of the changes you did, correct?
Right, I mean, our goal is to, what I'd like to hear from you is, what do you want? Do you want single-family homes, or do you want townhomes? My proposal is, we can do both. With the same design, by splitting the lots and making them, like your 4 lots in the front, we make them 3 lots. Then we get 3 twin homes, which is 6 units. Same with the other 2, then we get 4 units, so we got 10 total units. We're open to do it either way. If the city wants to get a lot for the student build, would you rather do single family, or would you rather do 1-level townhomes?
Well, you have the side-by-sides for sale right now, and by your email, it sounds like you're sold out of them already. So they're very popular.
Yeah, right, they're popular because there is none in North St. Paul. You have a few, and the seniors, that's what they want. But is that what you guys want?
Well, we're looking, go ahead.
Oh, I think the housing study that was done, I think last year, seemed like the biggest gaps were in kind of multiplexes or duplexes. And if we're looking at the most recent types of buildings that we're putting in, many of them are already single-family or townhomes, and so I think this would mix it up a little bit.
And I talked to some neighbors around there, and one level. I mean, somebody was talking about, the one was the 3 levels down there where M&I, well, nobody wants that. I mean, it's a 1-level stucco community, and then the side-by-side would be 1 level and would fit in. Correct. No towers, so that's where, I think that, that seems to be a need for our area, because a lot of people are aging out of their homes. That's my opinion.
I certainly think that's, an option to consider.
I would say we need to give staff direction then on how to communicate with the developers about what our intent is. Personally, I would like to say, I don't know if it's a point system or whatever, but high points would be awarded to developer that could include 1 lot for student built, and high points would be included to the developer that would have slightly higher density, the side-by-side, but also communicate to developers that only single levels would be considered. Just to be fair to all the developers, about what we are expecting them to present to us.
But if we keep the student build, that will be a single house. They don't do doubles, so then it'd look weird having,
I believe
Bunch
they
there.
have in the past.
I've never, they took a duplex and made it a single family, and that's the one by Webster School, but,
Built a couple of them close enough together, you could just bridge the gap.
yeah. But I haven't seen any duplex as far as that, side by side, I should say, sorry.
Well, I think it's worth, yeah.
Asking if they do it,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'd potentially give them 2 years of project. Interior wise.
Doug, thank you for your question. What does the city want? What do we want moving forward? Do we want to have Brandy go back to the developers, ask for the side-by-side homes, single family? At the end of the day, what do we want? And then now we're revisiting student builds. If we're gonna have a student build, what does that look like?
Was a student built in reference to the hybrid model? Tim, when you were referring that recently?
Mine was about a chunk of land.
Yeah.
I didn't care what went on it. Mine was about negotiating a potential plot of land if we think we're tight.
I would prefer to have it go to just the developer, because then you got this lag and everything else, and just get it done, and then we'd have to keep our eye open for, and it may cost a little bit more maybe, but just to get the project done and over with. That's kind of where I'm leaning
I'm
towards
not
it.
close to anything.
Yep, yep, I get it.
I just
Yep.
made the recommendation.
Yeah, I just think trying to pull it out, and then after they're done with that, it's just gonna delay and maybe run into some issues when it has two different groups there, is my thought.
And then I guess one other question I would probably have when working with the developers is time from start to completion. And I'm assuming they won't, a lot of the properties won't be built until there's a buyer. So at what point in the project do they just choose to spec build? You know, is it 3 years, is it 2 years, is it, just so we've got an idea? Does that make sense? I mean, just kind of a timeline?
Do you build a spec one to start with, and then,
Yeah, you build a model right
Yep,
away. And
that's what I thought.
typically, like the ones you're doing here, we just keep building them. They're not even solely built. I mean,
Okay,
they're put up the last building.
perfect.
You know, that's because that's what you need. They're gonna, once they're done, people buy them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so.
Perfect. Yeah, I was just going off
You know, a year and a half.
Yep.
probably.
6-year
yeah.
student build project.
What'd you say the final time, Mike?
A year and a half.
Year and a half?
Perfect, awesome.
So we're in consensus that we're removing the thought of a student build from the land.
I'm in consensus of that, but I don't know what the rest.
I'm okay with that.
I'll consent.
Okay,
Well, and I mean, for direction with Brandy,
No,
so
right.
now we
No,
want
Thank you.
yep.
single family or the townhome style?
Are your, you're here, so I'm bugging you, sorry, but are yours age, like 55 older, or how do you guys work yours? Just normal? Is it,
We typically don't put a restriction on them, but everybody's over 55 that buys them. I mean, everybody in this development, for sure. And every ones that we've done, same thing. They're either right at retirement age, still working, or retired.
okay.
And the reason being is, you know, they're basically 2 bedrooms on. So that's it, you know, unless you finish the basement.
And yours have basements in them, and the other one was slab, I think, yep, okay.
So I got out of curiosity, do you make them handicap accessible? Or is that per request, or is that, I mean, I don't know how that goes.
Like all their doors are bigger
Okay,
and things like that in these for, you know, if you have a walker or anything like that.
right.
You know, I mean, they're not like totally set up, but if somebody wanted something set up, it would be easy enough to do, for sure.
Okay.
Yes, sir?
If you allow me to note in this kind of Randy way, but single-family home, 6-lot version.
Do you want to, should he come up to the microphone? Is that, can you?
Doesn't require a lot of, it doesn't require anything. It meets
That's,
the process goes, that would be a lot
Okay.
faster process than
I concur with that statement,
PUD and so on and so forth.
but I would also state that if the developer and the city both desire a higher density product, then it is in our long-range plan to have something a little bit higher density. And that the extra hoops to jump through would be in alignment with those long-range goals.
We all agree that single family, one level fits that community as a council?
I think the density is important. We have a housing shortage and.
No, I'm asking level.
Yeah, so I think that the more density,
Yep, single level house. I don't want to do the talk, I don't want to discuss anything that's, that's real tall because that's not part of the neighborhood.
I'm open to a second story.
I like to see a single level.
I'm personally not opposed to a second story. My concern is we're gonna put so many qualifiers on what council wants the houses to look like, that the developers can't meet what we're asking. So I guess I would leave it upon them to come back and propose to us. Just no three-story cup unders.
Yeah, I think because it's within the comp plan, that's why I'm suggesting it.
I would suggest that we provide a maximum density to the developers so that they know what we're willing to potentially accept based on our long-range plan, and give them the upfront understanding that if it's not 6 lots, then it will require additional entitlement processes with the Planning Commission and City Council in order to get it approved. So it will take a little bit more time, but then the yield would be greater for both the developer and the city.
So my biggest thing was to go through the student build and understand if we're selling this, what we have for value. So I think we agree on that. So then we can work on the next layer, which is getting the right requirements to get proposals. So agree on that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Out of curiosity, and not to get too far into the weeds, would they be finished basements, or would you leave that up to the homeowners? Okay.
And the ones up on Kerry Lane there, I'm kind of surprised myself, they're probably half of them that are finished.
Okay.
Typically for their kids live out of town or something, so when they come back and visit, they have a place to stay. That's about,
Sure.
most of them are used to.
Yep. Thank you. You feel you got enough to work with?
I do. I think I have enough direction for the next meeting. Well, let me just verify. We're going to go back to the developers and ask that they provide a new presentation to City Council, which would happen potentially after our Planning Commission review on the 7th of I believe it's the 7th of January. And then they will come back on the 16th for presentation to the City Council.
Yeah, really got to get the planning commission to be
Okay.
able to sign off on that.
And are those presentations made in a workshop, or are we going, is the intent? I think we need to have a closed session after that. So I'd
I agree with that.
workshop, in my opinion, and a closed session afterwards.
I agree.
Is the closed session after the council meeting or the workshop?
After the council meeting.
Okay.
Or do we feel like a closed meeting is sufficient to have what we would talk about in a workshop and talk more deeply? Sorry?
He still wants to see the
I still want to
proposals.
see the proposals.
Okay, I see.
So I don't know if we can have proposals given in a closed session.
No, yeah, no.
Didn't think so.
Nah.
All right, we're good? Oh, go ahead.
Just to make sure we're dotting i's and crossing t's, we've talked about the 2 developers that have already submitted something. Legally, do we put this out just to those 2, or do we have to cast a wider net? I don't know.
I don't think there's any legal requirement to do that. I would advise at this point, just because we've had these 2 going on for 6+ months, that we should just keep it at the 2.
Okay.
So do we want 2 different proposals, density housing, single family, from each developer?
I was going to request that the developers provide the proposal of their choosing, and they would be able to propose up to a certain density based on our comp plan requirements, or as little as they choose. And that they would come to provide their presentations to the planning commission at one meeting and then to the city council at the next.
Everybody okay with that, or what's your thoughts? You good?
I'm good.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandy.
Thank you for coming. Appreciate it, guys.
All right, the next item is property redevelopment and disposition policy. Turn that back over to Brandy.
Okay, another presentation. This one's timely. It kind of fits right in with what we were just discussing. So in your packet is a draft policy that we put together at your direction from a few meetings ago when we had a conversation with the chair of the EDA, Mr. Robert Dew. And the intent of this policy is to have a frank, well, the intent of tonight's discussion is to have a frank discussion about how we're going to process these kinds of requests in the future, just like what we had as far as city-owned property or HRA-owned property. So this is the draft policy statement that is included in the document. This first paragraph, it's not verbatim, but it's coming out of our comprehensive plan. It says that North St. Paul is a fully developed community in the Twin Cities metropolitan area. Community growth will be focused on redevelopment, the reuse of land, encouraging density, and creatively fitting new pieces into the existing fabric of the community. The next paragraph gives us some flexibility. It says that we're not compelled to sell property, and we're not compelled to sell undevelopable parcels of property that might be more appropriately conveyed to a budding landowner, for example, right-of-way. If we wanted to vacate right-of-way, you would split that down the middle and it would go to the two abutting property owners. So it's leaving some flexibility for those types of situations. And then it also acknowledges that we have 3 entities that own land in the city, so the city council, the HRA, and the EDA. And the purpose of the policy ultimately, when we have a completed understanding of how we're going to operate, is to have an open process by which the city sells its real estate for the redevelopment purposes. So the standard process is basically 4 simple steps. We have a piece of land. We're going to compile the site information. We'll do a RFP to solicit proposals. We'll select a developer, and then we'll come to an agreement with the developer. So the site information piece is kind of what we've been working on with the 17th and Delaware property. That site has a really long history, so I was able to compile a bunch of information based on that, and it could include your survey documents, any easements that we may have access to, the platting, appraisal, et cetera. Just anything and everything that we could possibly get our hands on related to the site. If there's environmental work that's been done, it would include that. We would then prepare marketing materials that we would put on the website and utilize in other ways to try to let the development community know that we have land and we want it to be sold and redeveloped. And then we also have situations like the site across the street where parcel combination or consolidation might be required or necessary in order to make it a more marketable site. And when to do that would be based on the direction of the city manager, is how it's currently written. So our development proposal process would allow us, not mandate, to issue an RFP. So we would advertise that on our website, on the city's agendas where we would be discussing it. We would put a sign on the property that says this is for sale. We're going to have an RFP proposal solicitation process, and then we would also directly email to any developers that we happen to have in our contact book. When we receive those proposals, we would evaluate them based on the criteria that I have listed here. So that includes our consistency, or its consistency with our comp plan and the future land use designation of the site. Consistencies with the goals, objectives, and the land uses that are in the redevelopment master plan. The quality of the development concept proposed and the compatibility of it with the surrounding development. The proposed purchase price, the proposed public benefits of the project, if any, the experience and reputation of the developer, and then any long-term financial impacts of the project. So it is, the proposal would be, we have issued the RFP, we've received our responses, we have a selection committee that is created, determined by the city manager, those entities that he would want to have on that, and maybe it's staff, maybe it's a combination of staff, council representative, planning commission representative, EDA representative, whatever the appropriate makeup might be based on that direction. And then we would review those proposals based on the criteria in the previous slide. Planning commission would have a crack at it, and this is a policy consideration for this group. The Chapter 32 of our municipal code currently requires that any property to be sold by the city has to have the planning commission make a recommendation to city council. State statute requires the planning agency do that, and if, according to Soren, staff planning department could be considered the planning agency. So it's a consideration for you if you would like to have fewer formal steps or not. So by adding this planning commission step in there, it does create a longer process in terms of hitting meetings, having recommendations to council, et cetera. Or if we have it with the planning staff, city-led, it would shrink that process time. So after the planning commission review, if we are going to do that, then we would bring it to council to select a preferred developer. Once the city council has selected its preferred developer, it would direct city manager and staff to prepare a memorandum of understanding with that entity. And the purpose of the MOU would be to allow the city to temporarily lock in the developer and give them time to complete any necessary due diligence on the site. Council would also have the opportunity to deny any of the proposals and just choose not to do them. And they would have to provide written notice within 14 days of that decision. So once the terms of the MOU have been established by the developer and the city manager or team, it would be placed on a regular council item. It would be placed on a regular agenda for city council for action. And then the final step would be a negotiation of the purchase price, if that wasn't already predetermined in the MOU. And this is another policy decision. It could be conducted at the staff level again, or city council could hold a closed meeting to discuss an asking price, review the appraisals, consider counteroffers on the property, if any, and the resale value of the property. In determining the price, you would consider the appraisal value, if we were to receive one, if we were directed to obtain one rather, the pro forma of the developer, if provided, and the development quality, the design of building materials and compatibility with the surrounding area. In some cases, review by other commissions might be necessary. So the EDA may be asked to review a proposal if the recommendation is found by staff to be inconsistent with our redevelopment master plan. And the Park and Recreation Commission might be asked to review the proposal if it were to impact an existing park or if a land dedication is proposed as part of the project. And as we talked about earlier tonight, other entitlements might be required in order to move these projects forward. If we have a developer that's been selected and they're in agreement that they're going to move forward, we might have to have site plan approval, replatting, rezoning. We may need a comprehensive plan amendment. Case in point would be the Lilly project. We had to do that. And many of those things are required before construction could be fully approved and begin. Standard process would be for all those entitlements to come together at the same meeting that we would have a development agreement. So it's really the heavy lifting in terms of who do we want to select? Are we committed to this group? Would kind of occur at the MOU process. And then you would have your staff iron out the details with the development agreement, and getting it through the other entitlements. That concludes the presentation. You may have noticed in the policy that there is a to be completed point for the HRA. And the reason for that is the HRA has some specific requirements per statute, but I think that the procedures should probably follow the same lines as the city council. And so once we have, determined a process for council, we would modify it slightly for HRA based on whatever those statutory requirements are. And I will take any questions from my chair. Thank you.
Any questions, anyone?
I have one. My thought on the purchase price agreement to make it a smoother process is we set a number, and whatever that number might be, where if it's, and I'm pulling a number out thin air, but if it's 101,000 or less, the planning authority of the staff negotiate the purchase price, and if it's over something, then it's a closed section among us, just to help speed things up for lower value properties.
Do you have a general timeline for what you have here? The broad.
Timeline in terms of start to finish of
Yeah.
a project? I haven't developed one, but just thinking it through, assuming we decided on January 1st that we were going to issue an RFP, we would probably want to provide at least 4 weeks, maybe 6 weeks time for them to respond. We wouldn't be able to have it onto a planning commission and council agenda until reasonably March. So that's already 3 months into it. Then we've got to do some negotiations. So then we're looking at April. And once we have that nailed down, then that's when we can begin. Well, they would probably begin their due diligence period, which could be another 6 months. At which point, during that time, we would continue our negotiations in terms of what's going to go into our development agreement. How are they going to, if it's a PUD, what are they going to provide to us as a public benefit? So a lot of things would be happening behind the scenes for a period of time from the day that the MOU is signed until the next time that it would come forward again to the city council. So I think in reality, like a project, like the Lilly project, if you think about that, that was like at least a 1 year, possibly 1.5 year long project from the date of conception to the date that they got their final approval from city council. How long is it going to take to determine which proposal we want to move forward with and an identified purchase price? Probably about 3 months.
Thank you for that. I guess like in this situation, if we were to do like 100,000, like is decided on by staff, then would this proposal fall under that from the High Point and Luther?
That's part of the reason why we did this exercise and we brought out for appraisal, because we never had an asking price. The other one did 150,000 asking, the other one did 70, so, and then we did an appraisal. So we're really kind of going backwards on this one.
I guess my question would be, where is your start point? Is the start point the selling price, or is the start point the development?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yep. $1.7 million.
Wow.
They're big houses, guys.
Yeah.
I mean, so that's why I asked.
Yeah, that's
the
fair.
land value itself is 100,000.
Yep.
But the
Right.
development,
And all I was thinking was a negotiation of the purchase price.
Got
Just that part to speed it up. Just that little tiny piece of it, not the more,
and I
broader. Because she was saying that it could either be a closed session negotiation after a council meeting or a planning, you called it planning, if formed by staff,
Oh, planning agency.
the planning agency, either one of those could negotiate the purchase price.
Well, no, to be clear, the property sale has to be reviewed and a recommendation made by the planning agency to city council. That is not the group that negotiates the price. That's the group that determines whether or not that property sale and project is consistent with our comprehensive plan.
In sale price, somebody could buy that lot for 100,000, put one house in the middle and have a big yard. It's not a development.
We could, and that would be a good reason for our planning commission to review it.
And I guess I would also suggest that the price of the parcel may be negotiated into what is being developed. So there, there may not be a $100,000 check written for the property, because it may involve other puts and takes from the city from a negotiation standpoint.
Good.
Good.
Ultimately, city council is going to have the final determination what the price is. I think if we keep the policy flexible as we kind of work through it and get our bearings to determine how we want to handle these.
And the appraisal also said on it as is, so we're just selling bare land. We're not.
In this
touching it.
particular case,
That's what the
yes.
100,000 is.
Yep.
It's as is. So no coming back from the city with anything else. It's what we're talking about is that, okay.
In terms of promotion, you had mentioned the website and a couple places to advertise. Does the state or deed have any kind of directory of developers or something along those lines? So we can better get a larger, maybe, pool of applicants or inquiries?
Yeah, that's something I would have to investigate, but I believe that it's quite possible they might.
Well, I appreciate the structure because right now we didn't have any. And it's been very, very difficult because we had the one development that kind of exploded on that. Now we have this one. We're going back and trying to piece it together. So thank you for the work on that.
And do we have appraisals for all of our properties at this point, or just that one?
Just that one for now. I have one ordered for the site across the street. One is in a holding pattern until the plat has been completed, which will establish the easements and the actual lot itself, because we're proposing to cut it off from the parking lot. There's a lot of overlapping of, the site is not defined, what we're actually going to develop at this point in time. And then the other one on 7th Avenue and, the address is escaping me, the one next to Sidewinders. I've asked for an appraisal of that earlier this week, so that'll probably be coming in the next couple of weeks.
Thank you.
Appreciated. Then we have a packet together and be ready. Thank you.
In terms of the structure of the review group, I think that you kind of hit on a lot of different really important components or people that are, I guess, areas that need to review it. So you have planning, you have HRA, EDA. I'd be open to seeing, just a structure like that. I don't know if it's tagged on to HRA meeting or EDA meeting or what have you, but I think that can kind of make sure that we get the entire picture faster than normal.
And where are we at right now with the EDA and the talk about with the structure and things like that?
That is still ongoing. I'm talking with Soren about that. And,
Okay.
so
Thank you. Anything else? All right. Thank you very much. Other business, right?
nothing further.
Okay, you guys, anybody here? All right. I'd like to call for adjournment. So move. Councilmember Cole.
Second.
Second, Councilmember Wong. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everyone. And we have 15 minutes.